All right, quickly going to share how to bring the assignments locally and how to make sure you've done the assignments correctly and test them. So throughout the cohort, we'll try to maintain all the assignments in this specific repository. The way to bring this repository locally on your machine is go to this link, which is 100x github.com/100xdevs-cohort-2/assignments. Click on this green button right here and click on download zip. Once you do, unzip the thing that you received and it should basically create a folder like this. Basically all the contents that you see here, a folder called o1-js, you should see locally on your machine. Once you do, open this in Visual Studio Code. That's what I've done here. And then you should see something like this. You should see an assignments folder which has a 01-js folder in your VS Code locally. This is step one. Now you have the assignments locally. You still have to solve them, but at least you have the code locally in your machine and you can start to make changes here. One big prerequisite I forgot to mention was you need to make sure you have Node.js installed on your machine. Steps are straightforward, available on the internet. Just search how to install Node.js on Ubuntu, Mac, wherever, Windows. If you face issues, feel free to ask TS. The way you know that you have Node running locally is that if you type the node command here, so how to open this terminal? The way to open this terminal is click on terminal and click on new terminal here. And here, if you type node and you can see something here, it means you're sorted. If you type node and it says the command does not exist, is when you know there is a problem. Okay, and then you need to install Node.js correctly. If you see this and Node.js is installed correctly, the next thing you have to do is you have to run a command for me. It's called npm install. We will discuss more next week what this is, but for now, just take it as a black box and run this command locally. Once you've run this command, run one more command for me. This command is cd o1-js. cd o1-js. What this will do is it stands for change directory to o1-js. As you can see here, it says assignments. Here it says o1-js. The reason is we've moved our terminal to this folder right here from the folder above it. What that does is it'll let you run tests for your assignments. Cool. So only three things we have done until now. One, brought the code base locally. Two, opened it in VS Code. Three, ran the npm install command. Four, did a cd o1-js and reached this folder. Now here is where you have to first solve a problem. All the problems are available here. The folders you have to look at are easy, medium, and hard. Ignore the tests folder. In easy, you'll find, for example, a few problems. Let me open this one called find largest element. The problem statement is above here. Write a function find largest element that takes an array of numbers and returns the largest element. So it is a function. You've been given the function signature, which means it's an empty function, but they've told you that numbers is going to be an array and you have to return the biggest number inside that array. You have to solve the problem here. I'm going to do it for this one. The rest of them you should solve yourself. For this specific problem, there's a standard way to solve it, which is you iterate over the array one by one and you find the longest element. You maintain the biggest element in a variable. So something like this, let biggest element equal to numbers of 0, which means initialize this variable with the zeroth element in the numbers array. For example, if the numbers array is 1, 2, 3 minus 1, then here we initialized biggest element with 1. Then we iterate over this numbers array for let I equal to 0, I less than numbers dot length I plus plus. We now iterate over the complete array and check if numbers of I is greater than biggest element. You found something that is greater than the existing biggest element. You set biggest element equal to numbers of I, and at the end you return biggest element. You don't have to log it or anything. This function needs to take as an input the array, return the biggest value as an output. This is the solution to this specific problem, which is write a function that takes an array of numbers as input, for example this, and returns the largest element. How are we doing it? we iterate over the complete array, and anytime we reach a number whose value is greater than the thing that we have maintained here, okay, this is an initial value which is like 1 initially, and then we iterate over this array 4 times. So first this 1 reaches here, we check is 1 greater than 1, no, so we ignore and proceed. Then control reaches here, numbers of I becomes 2, and then we check is 2 greater than 1, yes, so what will this get set to? 2. Same for 3, the third iteration, we check is numbers of I, which is 3, greater than the last biggest element value, which was 2. That is true, and so control does reach here, biggest element becomes 3. Then minus 1 is not greater than 3, and hence biggest element remains 3, and by the end we return biggest element. This logic I think is right, but how do I know it is actually right? By running the command in your terminal, run npx space jest space dot slash tests slash the specific test that the path to the specific test that you are testing. For example, I am testing find largest element dot test.js. That is the test file for find largest element.js. This is where I've written the code. This is where tests are written. What are tests are? Just something that is able to evaluate your code. So if I run this npx dot slash test slash find largest element dot test.js, you will see it says checkmark, 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 which means my code worked for the 4 test cases we have. You can actually go to find largest element dot test.js in this test folder and actually look at the tests. What does it say? Okay, bhai, find largest element of this thing should return 9 because 9 is the biggest element here. 27 is the biggest element here. So it's just a bunch of tests that are written for various cases. And as you can see, I passed all 4 of them. If there was a bug in your code base, for example, if I go back here and let's say I just return 1 always, and then I try to rerun it, you will see it says 1 test failed, 4 tests failed. A lot, the full test suite failed, and all the 4 tests failed. And you can actually just look at what it is telling you. It is telling you this was supposed to be 9, but you got something else. Received 1 was supposed to be 9. That way you can debug, if there is some issue here. Usually you shouldn't look at test solutions because you might create an erroneous solution which passes these tests but isn't actually correct. So without looking at these, without looking at the output here, if this gives you an error, says failed here, means there is a logical bug here, try to fix it. All right. So that's the gist of how you can solve this specific problem. If you have solved it correctly, this will run. Similarly, there are a bunch of easy problems, medium problems, and hard problems. Hard are really hard. Hard also sort of expect you to Google a bit and understand what are classes in JavaScript. So feel free to ignore hard, especially if you're a beginner, even medium, but try to do the basic ones at the very least. Make sure they're running correctly. If you do all of these and you want to check, that your code is running correctly, you can independently test like this. Or if you want to test all of them, you can do npx test dot slash test and it'll run tests for everything. So if you feel like you've solved everything, easy, medium, hard, run this single command that will test all of your test files and make sure you've done everything correctly, basically. Cool. That is the gist of the assignment. Not sharing solutions right now. We'll share solutions at the very end. If there are more questions, post on Discord, but hopefully this was a decent overview. What are the steps? Number 1, bring the project locally from GitHub. Just download the zip from here and unzip it. Number 2, open it in VS Code. Number 3, run npm install. Number 4, run cd o1-js and make sure you see o1.js here. Number 5, make the changes in whatever file you want to. For example, I solved this problem. I changed the body here. You might solve this problem. You will add the logic here. Once you do, run npx jest dot slash the path to the test file. What is the test file for example, anagram.js? It is dot slash test slash anagram.test.js. So just find the corresponding test file, run this, make sure it is correct. And if it is, means you've written the right code. If not, you've written the wrong code. Cool. All right. That's it for me.